There's a Supreme Court case that we talked about recently when it was clear that the Supreme Court was going to take up the case. It was about Andrew Cuomo's top aides and the fact that they were found guilty of basically bribery and corruption. I believe it was Preet Bharara who went after them in New York. And the Supreme Court took up the case because these guys appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. And they were like, bribery? Corruption? I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't do that at all. And the Supreme Court came out yet again and proved that they are authoritarians. What we have here is judicial tyranny. That's what we're looking at. And look, this is almost like a giant middle finger from the Supreme Court over that string of reporting which showed just how corrupt Clarence Thomas is with his billionaire sugar daddy Harlan Crow, just how corrupt Neil Gorsuch is with a big real estate developer with some issues in front of the court. He bought one of Neil Gorsuch's properties. The court has been outed as deeply, deeply corrupt. And so in response to that, they're hearing this corruption case and showing their middle finger to everybody and saying, actually, it's not corruption because we define it as not corruption. Even if the plain face reading of the situation is something's off there, something sketchy, something shady, it is corrupt. They go, no, we disagree. So listen to this. U.S. Supreme Court tosses former Cuomo AIDS bribery conviction. The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday overturned the bribery conviction of Joseph Percoco, an ex-aide to Democratic former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, in a ruling that further limits the ability of federal prosecutors to pursue corruption cases. Look at this, guys. The justices ruled 9-0 in favor of Joseph Percoco, Cuomo's former executive deputy secretary, who was charged in 2016 as part of a corruption crackdown by federal prosecutors in Manhattan centered on the halls of the state capital of Albany. Now, look, you might hear 9-0 and go, well, hold on now. Was he innocent? I guess he didn't do anything wrong. 9-0, I mean, even all the liberal justices ruled this way? So, first of all, I urge you to go watch the video I did previously on this topic, so you get all the facts of the case. But I'll just give you a little taste here so you understand how absurd this is. In Percoco's case, the jury was required to determine whether he had a special relationship with the government and had dominated and controlled government business. Conservative Justice Samuel Alito wrote in the court's opinion, quote, "We conclude that this is not the proper test for determining whether a private person may be convicted of honest services fraud, and we therefore reverse and remand for further proceedings." Percoco was convicted in 2018 and sentenced to 6 years in prison for seeking $315,000 in bribes in exchange for helping two corporate clients of Albany lobbyist Todd Howe seeking state benefits and business. Thursday's ruling represented the latest in recent years in which the court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, has limited prosecutors in political corruption cases. In 2020, it overturned the convictions of two aides to Republican former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in the Bridgegate political scandal. In 2016, it threw out Republican former Virginia Governor Robert McDonald's bribery conviction. We covered that case too at the time. The dude was taking all sorts of super expensive luxury gifts and doing political favors. And they're like, nope, that's not corruption. The Supreme Court heard arguments in November in the case involving Percoco and a related one involving former construction company executive Louis Simonelli. The justices also unanimously overturned Simonelli's conviction on Thursday. Percoco's attorney said he was gratified with the court's decision, calling the prosecution an abuse of the federal fraud statutes that blurred the fundamental line between private citizens and public officials. Okay, think of this line for a second. So what they're saying is, bro, he can't be corrupt. He was a private citizen at the time, bro. What are you talking about? The U.S. Justice Department declined to comment. Percoco was convicted alongside an executive at a real estate developer, Stephen Aiello, who prosecutors said orchestrated bribes to Percoco. Howe pleaded guilty and cooperated with investigators. Prosecutors said Percoco referred to payments as ziti, a type of pasta that became a term for money by characters in the Sopranos mobster TV series. At the time of the actions at issue, Percoco was no longer serving in government as Cuomo's aide, but instead managing the governor's 2014 re-election campaign, a fact his lawyers said meant he could not be convicted of bribery. All right, so This is what happened in the case. And again, go watch the previous video that we did on it. But this is how ridiculous this is. So he was working for Cuomo. He steps down from working directly for Cuomo in his administration. He goes to work for his re-election campaign instead. When he's working for his re-election campaign, he takes hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes and works behind the scenes to get official government contracts for the people who gave him bribes, right? So he was in Cuomo's administration, went to his re-election campaign, then went back to his administration. And they say, since these actions didn't take place when he was in the Cuomo administration, and it was only when he was working for his re-election campaign, therefore, no bribery, nothing to see here, no problem whatsoever. It is beyond offensive. It is beyond disgusting. It is beyond comical. It is laughable. And it is deeply corrupt that they would try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and make this argument and have 9-0. So in other words, look, this is the Supreme Court, and they've done this in a number of cases from the 1970s and onwards. They basically say money equals free speech. There's very few campaign finance laws. They try to limit them every single year with some new case. This is them saying it is only corruption when somebody gets caught in a smoke-filled back room on camera saying, "Hello, sir, I would like to do bribes right now, and I am talking to you as an official representative of the government of this administration. Okay, give us this contract. Here's money. Well, thank you for the money. I will now do a quid pro quo and do the thing that we have agreed to do." In that scenario, they'd go, okay, yeah, that's bribery. But what we have in this situation is that dialogue, but the dude just took one sidestep to work for Cuomo's re-election campaign instead of being in the administration in that moment, because he went back to that, and they go, that's not corruption. That's fine. So we literally have like the dream scenario of like clear quid pro quo. They referred to the payments as ZD. People involved in the case were like, yeah, you caught us. So we were doing corruption. We were doing bribery. And the Supreme Court goes, no, not bribery, not corruption. So we have the dream quid pro quo scenario, but because the dude, in the exact moment he took the bribes, was not in the Cuomo administration, he was in the re-election campaign, they go, oh, that doesn't count. Do you have a Nat IQ, or are you just liars on purpose because you love the DC swamp? And we know the answer. The answer is they love the DC swamp. They are also corrupt. They don't want the guns being turned on them. So, by the way, I love this tweet. I'll show you this tweet about it. Laugh my fucking ass off. They voted 9-0 to limit public corruption laws in a case where the guys pretty much just wrote, I am soliciting bribes via email. I've never been more in favor of getting rid of judicial review, using court stripping, which, by the way, there is a provision for court stripping in the U.S. Constitution. The courts have too much power. Now, if they had the power and they used it for good things, like they did under Thurgood Marshall, for example, that's a different scenario, right? If you have a court that's like using judicial review for positive things, then I'd have a different feeling on it. And in fact, I did. But this court has become so extremist, so authoritarian, so tyrannical, so comical that you should be trying to undermine the court in every way imaginable. I would use court stripping provisions from here on out, where you pass something through Congress and you say, by the way, the court is not allowed to rule on this. I would absolutely do that. I would try to pack the court. I would have term limits, because this is a joke. This is a joke. This is a joke. They are laughing at you and me, destroying our country as they pretend the nobility of our institutions, yeah. We're the serious people in robes. We make all the decisions, and they're all smart decisions. We're part of the elite cabal, yes. You guys are ruining the country. This is a clear example of it, man. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.